Good evening, everybody. I think I'm audible. So today I will speak on the management of dengue fever, part one. Uh, if you the presentation is had been made in such a way that it will help the newcomers, specifically the first year resident, to improve their day-to-day practice and to be how can they be correct from every aspect in the time of management of dengue fever. So dengue fever usually managed by some protocolized management protocols. There are lots of protocols available. WHO protocol, lots of edition of WHO protocols are there. There is a 2012 protocol that has been modified by in 2016. There is CDC protocol. There is Government of India ICMR protocol, and there is West Bengal government protocol. But you know that dengue fever is such a thing that if anything happens regarding the treatment of dengue fever, there are lots of media coverages, lots of government inquiries are there. So better to stick on a single management protocol. So I'll be, as we are residing in West Bengal and we're treating here dengue patients, I want to stick on this West Bengal protocol. All the protocols are almost same, but there are 5 or 10% differences between each and every protocol. But if I want to tell you the difference of each and every protocol, it will be very much complicated. So I want to stick my presentation on West Bengal protocol and a bit from new WHO modified protocols are there. So I have classified the varieties of cases, dengue cases, for the ease of management. Which type of patient we usually get? Number one, it is an uncomplicated dengue fever or undifferentiated dengue fever or dengue fever without warning sign or simple dengue fever. I will discuss two cases with this type of fever. Then dengue fever with mild or few warning signs without any features of dengue hemorrhagic fever. I will discuss this case on case 3. Number 3, dengue hemorrhagic fever grade 1. I will discuss on case 4. Number 4 is the dengue hemorrhagic fever grade 2. I will discuss it on case 5. Number 5 is DHF grade 3, that is dengue shock syndrome. I will discuss it on compensated shock in case 6, uncompensated or decompensated shock in case 7. And number 6 is DHF grade 4, that is dengue shock syndrome or severe hypotensive shock, irreversible shock, shock with end organ dysfunction. So dengue case classification by severity by WHO 2012 modified in 2016. For severity classification, they have classified in 3 broad divisions. One is dengue without warning sign or simple dengue fever or undifferentiated dengue fever with warning sign, and severe dengue. So all the cases of severe expanded dengue syndrome, dengue shock syndrome, severe dengue hemorrhagic fever, all are going into the severe dengue. And warning signs is there and without warning sign is there. And a dengue patient can come to you or admitted without any features of warning sign, can slips into the dengue fever with warning sign, and again can slips into the severe dengue. So our goal is to identify the patients either in this stage or this stage and to prevent themselves to go in this stage. So before this, you need to know about the dengue hemorrhagic fever. So what should be the definition of dengue hemorrhagic fever? So it is a case of clinically confirmed dengue or a laboratory confirmed dengue. Take it as a laboratory confirmed dengue. When a dengue fever with laboratory confirmation. What is the indicator of laboratory confirmation? That Aniruddha told yesterday. Take it as a dengue fever with NS1 positivity by doing a ELISA test. Plus any one, all these 3 should be fulfilled. A, B and C. Any one of this A, B and any one of the C. So what is there? Hemorrhagic tendencies evidenced by one or more of the following: a positive tourniquet test, a petechia, ecchymosis or purpura, bleeding from mucosa, GI tract, injection sites or other sites, plus a thrombocytopenia with a platelet count less than 1 lakh, plus evidence of plasma leakage due to increased vascular permeability manifested by one or more of the following: a rise in average hematocrit value for age and sex of more than 20%, a more than 20% drop in hematocrit following volume replacement treatment compared to the baseline. Number 3 is the signs of plasma leakage. This is pleural effusion, ascites, or hyperproteinemia. So to stamp the case of dengue hemorrhagic fever, it must be a dengue fever with any one of these three. Any one of these three must be accompanied by thrombocytopenia. So now, what is dengue shock syndrome? So to classify the patient as dengue shock syndrome, this patient firstly fulfill the criteria of dengue hemorrhagic fever. Must be accompanied by rapid or weak pulse, narrow pulse pressure, hypotension for age and sex, cold clammy skin, restlessness. Any one or two or three or four of this. Important that if you detect a dengue hemorrhagic fever or dengue fever in the stage of hypotension, that means you are already late. Do not ignore restlessness or mental instability, irritability in any dengue patient where you are not getting any other features of hemodynamic compromise, because this is the features of cerebral hypoxia and tissue hyperperfusion. You may get a patient who fulfilling the features of dengue hemorrhagic fever, but not that much of weak pulse. Pulse pressure is just around 20 or 21. Blood pressure is just maintaining. Limbs are mild, not that much of cold, but is very much restless. Or there are some irritability. So take it as a caution or red flag sign. Possibly you are dealing a case of dengue shock syndrome. So there are 4 types of DHF. What are these? So DHF1, that is fulfilling all the criteria of DHF, but there is no spontaneous bleeding. There may be a positive tourniquet signs. There may be a small petechia ecchymosis, but no spontaneous bleeding. DHF2, fulfilling all criteria of DHF, but there must be a spontaneous bleeding, either an epistaxis, gum bleeding, hematuria, menstrual bleeding, or bleeding inside any body cavities. DHF3, fulfilling all criteria of DHF, accompanied by hypotension and other features of the shock. And DHF4 is the profound shock or irreversible shock. And these two called as dengue shock syndrome. So DHF criteria must be fulfilled to call a patient as dengue shock syndrome. So let's come into the case 1. This is an 8-year-old male came to the emergency with a fever for 4 days. There was a headache and body ache at the time of the fever, but he was apparently doing well within the spikes of temperature. Intake was good. There was no dehydration. Urine output was adequate. The mother told that he passed almost 6 times urine in the last 24 hours. He was hemodynamically stable, means warm, well perfused, pink, pulse volume are good, CRT less than 3 seconds, blood pressure is normal. Got an outside blood report, it revealed that dengue NS1 positive, total count is 5,200, hemoglobin is 12.1, PCB is 36.8, platelet is 1.8 lakhs per cubic millimeter. So these are the commonest form of dengue that it usually gets in the OPD or emergency department. So what should be the management in this case? So it is a simple dengue fever without any hemorrhagic tendencies or without any feature of shock or without even a feature of warning sign. So what should be the management in patient? So OPD based domiciliary care. You don't need to admit this patient straightforward to the indoor because he's not fulfilling any criteria for indoor admissions. So when you are treating this patient as OPD basis, you have to be very particular, very meticulous. So what are the protocols for this patient to manage in the home basis? Adequate bed rest. This adequate bed rest has been written in all the guidelines. I don't know what is the rationale of the adequate bed rest. Possibly, if you are not giving adequate bed rest, the fluid requirement may be increased or chances of trauma and thrombocytopenia induced bleeding may be there. You have to tell the parents or caregivers for adequate fluid intake. What do you mean by adequate fluid intake in uncomplicated or dengue fever without warning sign? Means the adequate fluid intake plus at least 4 to 6 glasses of water for a 8 or 10 or 12-year-old boy. Or any liquid. What are the liquid? You can advise for the child to take water, plain water, ORS, coconut water, fruit juice, barley water, or any soup. But you should avoid the parents to encourage to get the carbonated drink. This is prohibited. Then you have to tell the parents to give paracetamol for the fever. The dose is 10 to 15 milligram per kg per dose. You ask, do not give paracetamol before 4 to 5 hours. Do not repeat the dose, and maximum 4 to 5 times you can give. Definitely, each and every guidelines they are written that tepid sponging role is dubious. And tell the parents that as long as the fever persisting, the chances of deterioration is minimal. So closely monitor the kid when the fever started subsiding or the spike decreasing. And what are the monitoring things? What are the things or vitals the parents should monitor? And also for epidemiological purpose, look for the mosquito breeding places in and around the houses to eliminate them. What should not be done in that time? Do not give NSAIDs. Please do not prescribe any sorts of NSAIDs like mefenamic acid, naproxen, or ibugesic. Do not give any combination of NSAIDs with PCM for the parenteral pressure, because sometimes dengue fever is usually does not subside with paracetamol. You give paracetamol, the fever is coming now from 103 to 101, but do not come down below the baseline. So parent will be anxious and will repeatedly ask you to give something more. But please do not prescribe these things. Not only for the dengue fever. During this dengue season, from month of June to December, please do not prescribe any NSAID for the fever. Do not give unnecessary steroids, PPI, and antibiotic if you get a confirmed dengue patient. So what should be the SOS? So you have to tell the parents meticulously for these danger signs or red flag signs, and tell them if anything of this, any one of this develops, kindly contact the nearby medical facility. So bleeding, red spot or patches on the skin, bleeding from nose or gum, vomiting blood means hematemesis or hematuria or hemoptysis, black color stool, heavy menstruation and vaginal bleeding. Frequent vomiting and not able to drink, severe abdominal pain, drowsiness, mental confusion or seizures, pale, cold or clammy hands and feet, difficulty in breathing, dizziness, no urination for 4 to 6 hours. If it's not passing urine at least 4 times per day, that means some sorts of decreased urination is there. I will ask the resident to better to print it out, this danger signs in 4 languages, Bengali, Hindi, Urdu and English, and keep it in the emergency. If you are leaving any stable dengue patient for home care, please give it to them and tell them if anything appears among this, please come to the emergency. Another important thing that you can encourage the parents for this, that to buy this urinary pot and to measure the urine at home. It is easily available. You can do it in the domiciliary home care as well as in the inpatient care. That you ask them to buy a urinary pot and to measure the urine output. So you may ask to come back to you for a repeat evaluation after 24 hours to 48 hours if you feel so. You may ask to inform you by telemedicine about the status of the patient after 24 to 48 hours. I usually tell them. You may ask to repeat a hemoglobin PSV platelet after 24 or 48 hours because the patient came in day 4, so possibly he will go into the afebrile phase within next 24 to 48 hours. So if you feel that platelet is on the borderline, PCV in the borderline, you may ask to come back to you after 24 to 48 hours after doing a hemoglobin PCV and platelet, or you may ask to give do the report and inform you the reports and the status of the patient through telemedicine. Case 2, similar patient, similar vitals, 8 years old male, fever for 4 days, headache and body at the time of the fever, doing well in between the spikes of the temperature, intake was good, no dehydration, urine output adequate, hemodynamically stable, dengue NS1 positive, total count normal, hemoglobin PCV normal, platelet 1.8 lakh. Same status, but there are a few red lines. Parents are hyper anxious. They're very much anxious that my kid has dengue. Parents want admissions. Please admit my child. बच्चे को admit कर लीजिए. Parents not seems to be cooperating. They are not cooperating with you in the emergency, but they are not feeling comfortable to take the child home. Or I don't know, he's maybe a consultant, private patient or chamber patient, or having some political catch or local patient in case of ICH. So please try to admit this patient, because if you feel anything of this, do not leave this patient at home. If you leave thousands of these patients, 1 or 2 may deteriorate and there will be problem. So please admit this patient. If you don't want to admit, at least write down admission in the prescription sheet, and if they refuse admission, please countersigned by them. Management, if you're admitting this patient in hospital, so there must be adequate fluid intake. So how do you calculate the adequate fluid intake? As this patient is not sick, you are admitting for non-theoretical reason, for the practical reason, but this patient will be in high demand. If you don't give any IV fluid, they will create some problem. I'm telling you the practical aspect. So you must have to run some IV fluids, but do not run too much of IV fluid. If you feel that oral intake is good, then run a 50% or 30 or 40% of recommended IV fluid. You have to give the paracetamol for the fever, rapid sponging, monitoring of the vitals. Three things that you need to do when you are admitting this patient. Filling up the top seats. So the West Bengal government has made a mandatory for each and every dengue patient, whether it's admitted in the indoor, SD or ICU facility, to fill up the top seats. If you don't have the top seat, please download in the sites or available to the Metron. Xerox it, print out it, and top seat must be filled up. This is mandatory. You have to give a very good, well-documented notes of all the events, at least twice daily or thrice daily note for all the stable patient of dengue. Morning and evening should be must. One note must be countersigned by consultant. Dengue patients are more subject to the medical cases and CPA cases, so you have to be very cautious regarding this. And definitely, you have to repeatedly counsel the parents. The same thing that until and unless fever is not subsiding, the patient is not in danger. When the fever will come to cease or the spike will be coming down, the chances of problem will be there. Otherwise, they will blame you that we have admitted the patient in a stable condition. Now the fever has subsided and my patient has been deteriorated. So you must have done something wrong. So tell them from the beginning about the prognosis that only 10 to 15% of dengue patients are going to the critical phase. Otherwise, most of the patients are not going to the critical phase. You don't know at this moment whether your patient will be encountering the critical phase or not, but it will occur within the next 24 to 48 hours, especially between the day 5 to day 7. So counseling of the parents are very much important. And at least if any dengue patient has been admitted in the indoor, whatever may be the holiday, this patient must be seen at least once in a day by a single consultant. You never know when the dengue patient will deteriorate. So you must be very much correct, very much methodical regarding the medical legal procedures. What should not be done? Anything. Do not prescribe NSAIDs. Do not prescribe combination of NSAIDs with PCN. Do not prescribe unnecessary steroids and PPI and antibiotics. Few things that you have not done in the domiciliary care, that try to avoid IV paracetamol in the general ward settings. These parents are hyper anxious. The fever usually does not subside. They will constantly bother you. Doctor, amar bachcha jorta komche na. Fever is not subsiding. And sometimes you are forced to write down IV paracetamol for easy subsidence of the fever. But should avoid using IV paracetamol in the general ward without any monitoring. You can use it in the SD or PICU setting because sometimes if you give a rapid infusion of IV paracetamol, it is associated with fatal arrhythmia. You try to avoid unnecessary pricks. Sometimes residents or consultant or the mother or parents may be very much hyper anxious that I want to move the platelet count every 4 to 6 hours or twice daily. You try to avoid unnecessary pricks. If you think the patient is clinically stable, the baseline platelet and hematocrit is normal, you do not need to do twice daily or every once blood test. You can do every once, but there is no point of doing twice daily blood test. If the urine output is good, there is no features of capillary leak, hemorrhagic tendencies, hemorrhagic manifestations, or shock. Everything is perfect. You just admit it for some other reasons, not for the theoretical reasons. Avoid unnecessary catheterizations. For this patient, these are the bulk of the patients that will be admitted in the hospital. So this patient, try to educate the mother. Try to make the mother as a modified nurse. Give her or any other caregivers a pen and pad. Tell her that how much intake the child is getting, how much fluid the child is getting, to note down the fluids, to note down the urine in the urine collection pot, and inform you in the morning and evening rounds. If you train the mother, they will do better than our sisters. And you know the settings of ICH, there are lots of patients and not too much nurses are there. So make the mother as a modified nurse. It's very much important to note down all the intake by oral route as well as the output. The nurses are very much strict in writing down the IV fluids, but they are not very much strict to writing down the oral fluids. So you must not ignore the oral fluid. Sometimes it happens the over anxious or hyper anxious parents, over enthusiastic parents, sometimes give 3 to 4 liters of oral fluid to a kid, and there may be fluid overload. And in this time, in any dengue patient, whatever may be the condition, is passing more than 3 ml per kg per hour of urine, that means the fluid is more. If anything happens to this patient in future, means in the leaky phase, if it goes in the leaky phase, anything happens, he will be sued in that line that possibly you are given the overfluid. So try to maintain the urine output less than 3 ml per kg per hour. If anything happens, the committee, the CRC, the medical council, the committee can sue you that you have given the overfluid because the urine output is more than 3 ml per kg per hour. Avoid catheterizations and encourage the mother for a meticulous urine output monitoring. Case 3, you'll also get these types of patients. It's an 8-year-old male, fever for 4 days, headache and body ache at the time of fever. Urine output was normal, passed 6 times urine, hemodynamically stable. But 4 new things than case 1 and case 2. What are those? He was a bit sick in between the spikes of temperature. There is a pain abdomen. There are 2 episodes of non-bilious vomiting. The mother is telling that intake is suboptimal and you find some dehydration is there. But the urine output is normal, is perfectly hemodynamically stable. There is no features of capillary leak, bleeding, hemorrhagic tendency or shock. The blood reports, so almost same. The dengue NS1 positive. Total count is 5,200. Hemoglobin PCB is normal. Platelet is same. SGPT, SGOD is mildly elevated and albumin is normal. So see, there is no features of capillary leak. Blood reports are almost compatible to the previous 2 patients in case 1 and case 2, except a bit raised SGPT and SGOD is very much common in all the dengue patients. So what do? You must admit this patient for theoretical purpose as well as practical purposes, because there are some danger signs or warning signs like pain abdomen, decreased intake, dehydration and vomiting. So again, you have to ensure the adequate fluid intake must be oral plus IV, paracetamol plus fever, oral paracetamol, tepid sponging. Pain abdomen management, very much important. Most of the times, it's not that all the times this pain abdomen is associated with mesenteric ischemia. The pain abdomen may be due to hepatitis, maybe due to gastritis, maybe due to mesenteric ischemia. But whenever you get a patient, dengue patient with a pain abdomen, you first have to exclude about the mesenteric ischemia due to hypovolemia. Don't take it as gastritis and try and giving PPI twice daily. And there is no role of protein in case of pain management. You can give paracetamol or can give a synthetic opioid like tramadol if the pain abdomen is severe. You have to manage the vomiting. Try to manage the vomiting with oral medications like oral ondansetron, mouth dissolving tablets or syrup. Try to avoid giving IV ondansetron in the pediatric ward setting, because if you give it rapid, it causes arrhythmia. You definitely have to monitor the vitals. Strict urine output measurement. Ask the mother to measure the urine output in the urine output measurement pot. Filling up the top sheets, documentation of all events, counseling of the parents. Possibly for this patient, you need to do a daily labs. If not 12-hourly, you have to do the daily labs, because this patient has some subtle signs of warning signs. That this patient has a high tendency to go into the capillary leak or hemorrhagic tendency, hemorrhagic fever or shock. And if the patient is a obese or chota dengue or mota dengue, you have to be very meticulous about the daily labs. So what are the daily labs you want to do? You can do a hemoglobin, PCB platelet, SGPT and albumin. And we usually do cholesterol for the other purpose. Now, what I want to introduce among all of you, that the role of focus in this patient. So inpatient is a practically indicated admission, theoretically indicated admission inpatient. Some features, warning signs are there. No features of capillary leak, clinically and laboratory events. So you have to do a focus. What is focus? It's the point of care ultrasound. So focus is very much important in patients. So we are trying to do a study on the evaluation of dengue patient with the focus in this year and coming, and I will tell you later on the focus and the importance of this focus. I know why this is coming in, but it's very much disturbing. So these are the management of this patient, and you have to meticulously measure whether the patient is going to the capillary leak or not. If not going to the capillary leak, then they will be discharged. Case 4. This is an 8-year-old male. The fever spikes since today morning. The child came at the emergency department at 8 p.m. Mother is telling, doctor, there was fever for the last 4 days, but today morning the fever spike is coming down. So this is the red flag sign. There's a headache and body ache at the time of fever. Like case 3, there are 4 features are there. Sit in between the spikes of the temperature. There's a pain abdomen. There's vomiting, non-bilious. Intake is suboptimal. Some dehydration is there. But still, he is hemodynamically stable. Liver is 2 centimeters tender. There's a mild periorbital puffiness. That's a new thing. Sensorium is good. And 3 new things are there. The urine output is 1 ml per kg per hour in the last 12 hours. The patient came in the emergency yesterday. The resident asked the mother to meticulously measure the urine output in the urine output pot. And the mother is coming and telling doctor, my baby passed this amount of urine in the last 12 hours. And you have calculated that it is just 1 ml per kg per hour. It is adequate just in case of dengue. So you have done a tourniquet test. Aniruddha told yesterday how to do a tourniquet test is positive. But still there is no spontaneous bleeding manifestations. Means there is no wet purpura, no epistaxis, no gum bleeding, no hematemesis, hematuria, hemoptysis, GI bleed, no internal bleeding. No bleeding manifestation is there, no bleeding from the break sites. So these are the patients. So what is this on the labs? What you get in the labs? Dengue NS1 positive, total count is 5,200. And there are few things are there. So you see the PCV is 14 point, hemoglobin is 14.1 and PCV is 42.8. Platelet is 70,000. So this is different from the previous three cases. In previous three cases, the hemoglobin and PCV was less than 40. So when you do not know the baseline PCV and hemoglobin, it's better to take hemo concentration when you are getting PCV more than 39. In our continent, it is more than 40, then possibly hemo concentration. If the age is less than 40, less than 10 years. Platelet is 70,000, means is fulfilling the thrombocytopenia criteria. You can see the SGPT, SGOT is in thousands, means elevated. You see albumin is a borderline 3. So this patient presented to you with features of danger sign. There is no bleeding, but there are few features that pointing towards some sorts of hemorrhagic tendency. So it is fulfilling some criteria of dengue hemorrhagic fever. What are those? That among the three, first is the tourniquet sign is positive. Number 2, platelet is 70,000. Number 3 is that hemoglobin is more, PCV is more. In the number 3, the features of capillary leak is there, albumin is 3. So we did the focus on admission. So what you get in the focus? You can see ascites. You cannot get this ascites clinically. You can see this is the abdominal wall, and this is the gut loop, and this is, you can see the fluid. So this patient has a increased bleeding tendency, number 1, has thrombocytopenia, has features of capillary leak. So he is fulfilling all the criteria of dengue hemorrhagic fever. Now, in which stage? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Stage 3, stage 4 is shock. There is no shock. Stage 2, spontaneous bleeding. There is no spontaneous bleeding. So it must be in stage 1. So this patient fulfilling the positive tourniquet test with thrombocytopenia, with rising hematocrit, as well as the signs of plasma leakage. So it is a dengue hemorrhagic fever. So in a nutshell, we get this patient as a capillary leak has been already started. No frank, spontaneous, minor or major hemorrhages are there, but hemorrhagic tendencies are there, proved by a positive tourniquet test. Hepatitis is present, and in 1,000 is always dreadful. Still hemodynamically stable. No features of hemodynamic compromise is there. Urine output is just normal, 1. There is no spontaneous bleeding. So he is fulfilling all the criteria of DHF1. So management must be admitted. There is no problem. And here lies this thing. Sir asked not to put the copycat, but I have to give the copycat because you have to keep this in your mobile. You have to keep this stamp in emergency ward everywhere. You have to manage this patient line by line what you have given. If you are not doing line by line and anything happens to the patient, you will be in deep trouble. So these are the hemorrhagic tendency. So this is the management of dengue hemorrhagic fever, DHF1 and 2. Hemorrhagic tendency is there, thrombocytopenia is there, hematocrit is there, and capillary leak is there. But patient is hemodynamic stable. So when the patient is hemodynamically stable, but features of hemoconcentration, thrombocytopenia, and capillary leak is there, there is no point of giving fluid boluses. You should not give any fluid bolus. You just start the IV therapy as a 6 ml per kg per hour crystalloid solutions. What are the solutions available? Normal saline or RL for 1 to 2 hours. After 1 to 2 hours, you assess for clinical improvement. If it is improvement, IP therapy with crystalloid successively reducing from 6 to 3 ml per kg per hour over next 12 hours. Further improvement, discontinue the IV fluid after 24 hours. If you get DHF1 and DHF2 within 6 to 8 hours of entry to the capillary leak, you can taper off the IV fluid within 24 hours. It will not take beyond 24 hours. The late you identify the patient in capillary leak, the more IV fluid you need, the more time you need to get rid of this capillary leak and more complications will be there. But if there's no improvement after 2 hours, increase the IV fluid to 10 ml per kg per hour crystalloid for 2 hours. So from 6 to 10, there is no role of 8. If there's an improvement, again come down and go to the D-sleep. There is no improvement, an unstable vital sign within 4 to 6 hours of admissions, then you have to again repeat a hematocrit. If the hematocrit rises, that means you have given initial fluid boluses. So already you have given lots of crystalloids, but you still feel that patient will need some sort of fluids. So here lies the importance of follow it. Do not start colloid from the beginning. So here, like the importance of colloid. You have to give a colloid, just a colloid bolus. I will tell you what are the colloids available, what are the side effects. And if you feel that patient no improvement and vital signs are unstable, and hematocrit falls, that means some source of internal bleeding is there. So you need to give the blood transfusion and again follow it up. So you can repeat a hematocrit after 2 hours if you are not able to assess the improvement, deterioration of the status of the patient clinically. After 2 or 3 hours, you can repeat an hematocrit. If you are able to assess the status clinically, you do not need to repeat it. But if there's no improvement, then you must have to repeat it before at least in 4 hours to decide whether you need to give the colloid or whether you need to give the blood transfusion. So this is the management protocol for DHF 1 and 2 when there are features of increased bleeding tendency without any frank bleeding, with thrombocytopenia, with features of capillary leak, and the patient is still hemodynamically stable. Means pulse are normal, not cold clam is clean, and the blood pressure is normal, and urine output is just borderline. I think I'm clear up to that part. So now coming to the case 5, almost similar patient like case 4, 8-year-old male, fever for 4 days, decreasing spikes since today morning, headache and body ache at the time of fever, sick in between the spikes of the temperature, pain abdomen, non-bilious vomiting, intake suboptimal, some dehydration is there. Urine output is 1 ml per kg per hour in the last 12 hours. Is hemodynamically stable, liver 2 cm tenderness, mild periorbital puffiness, sensorium good, no restlessness, positive tourniquet. So all the status are almost similar, is ditto to the case 4, means type of dengue hemorrhagic fever 1. But the patient came to the emergency with a history of 1 episode of epistaxis with the right nostril, and in examination you find that there are few gum bleeding and wet particle. So it is the blood test. You got the report that PCB in the same range, SGPT, SGD almost in the thousands, albumin a bit decreased 2.9. And you see the platelet is 40,000. In previous years, it was 70,000. It's more thrombocytopenic. And in our usual practice, we did a focus. What you see in the focus, you can identify the small pleural effusion. Focus is very much sensitive to identify the pleural effusion. Most of my residents have been trained to do focus. If you get the pleural fluid, it's more than 1 millimeter. That means there must be a fluid. So this is 2 millimeter. We measured it with a cursor. And again, you can see there are some fluids in the abdomen. So capillary leak started. So in this patient, you got the same status. There's an increased bleeding tendency, thrombocytopenia, and capillary leak. Plus, there is a spontaneous bleeding. So you can get this bleeding from mucosa, new thing. This thing is there, this thing is there, and these two are there. So you got a patient when there's a capillary leak started. Hemorrhagic tendency is there. Spontaneous bleeding is also there. Urine output is just okay. Hemodynamically stable. Hepatitis present. So basically, you are getting a DHF2. What's with the management? Fluid management is as similar as DHF1. I'm not going into the details. So why I am discussing these two cases similarly? Because everything is similar. But only one thing is different. And that will create lots of panic among the caregivers, among the doctors. What is this? This is the epistaxis and gum bleeding. So we have a hemodynamically stable child with DHF2 with mucosal bleed, having capillary leak, and platelet is 40,000. So what is the panic? Platelets, to give or not to give. The parents, if the bit educated, will tell you, doctors are, please plates de dijiye. Plates, they know only thing about the plates. Or they will ask you to give some papaya juice or some alternative medicine to increase the platelets. Sometimes they will ask you to give some syrup to increase the platelets. And most of the consultants are very much comfortable. Okay, do the platelet bleeding. Very much comfortable to give platelet. So you need to know what is the theory, what is the practical approach. Both things. Platelets to give or not to give. Theoretically, no, I will not give platelet. So these are the indication of platelet transfusion in West Bengal guidelines. What are these? That platelet transfusion is not the mainstay of treatment in patients with dengue fever. In general, there is no need to give prophylactic platelet even if the platelet count is less than 40,000. Prophylactic platelet transfusion may be given at level of less than 10,000 in the absence of bleeding manifestation. May be given, it's not a mandatory. Prolonged shock with coagulopathy and abnormal coagulum. Patient is not fulfilling this criteria. In case of systemic bleeding, platelet transfusion may be needed in addition to blood cell transfusion. Whole fresh blood transfusion does not have any role in managing thrombocytopenia. And this thing, hemorrhage with or without thrombocytopenia. So you can tell, sir, this is fulfilling the criteria. My patient has a dengue patient has a hemorrhage. So I will give platelet. Definitely, it is fulfilling the West Bengal government Bengal criteria. So we can give platelet in this patient. But these are I will tell you what the other guidelines are differing from this. So what are the indication of blood transfusions? Loss of blood, over blood, 10% or more of total blood volume. Refractory shock despite adequate fluid administration and declining hematocrit. Replacement blood should be 10 ml per kg of body weight at a time and coagulum should be done. If fluid overload is present, packed cell transfusion is to be given. Use of whole blood, fresh frozen plasma, cryoprecipitate in coagulopathy. Use of whole blood, fresh frozen plasma, cryoprecipitate is to be done in coagulopathy with bleeding as per advice of the physician and patient condition. So the controversy is in case that if patient is hemodynamically stable, there is no very much blood loss, that hematocrit will fall down. So there is no role of giving FFP, cryo, PRBC, whole blood in this case. The confusion is that whether to give platelet or not. West Bengal guidelines telling that you can give platelet. So what are the WHO guidelines? I'm sorry, I have to copy paste line by line, otherwise it's very difficult. So what is the WHO guidelines modified? It telling mucosal bleeding may occur in any patient with dengue, but if the patient remains stable with fluid resuscitation and replacement, this should be considered a minor issue, like in our patient. The bleeding usually improves rapidly during the recovery phase. In patients with profound thrombocytopenia, ensure strict bed rest and protection from trauma. Do not give intramuscular injections. No evidence exists from observational studies. The prophylactic platelet transfusion are beneficial in hemodynamically stable patients. If major bleeding occurs, it is usually from the GI tract and or hypermenorrhea. Internal bleeding may not become apparent for many hours until the first black stool is present. So these are the patients who are at a high risk of bleeding. Profound or prolonged or refractory shock, hypotensive shock with multiple organ dysfunction, persistent metabolic acidosis, gut NSAIDs, having pre-existing peptic ulcer disease on oral anticoagulation, have any form of trauma, including IM injection. So our patient did not fulfill any criteria, hemodynamically stable. So chances are that this is a minor bleeding issue, it will subside by its own. So these are the action plan for treatment of hemorrhagic complication in dengue. So what should we do in this case? I am first telling the action plan, then I will tell what usually I prefer to do. If possible, very much important, if possible, attempts should be made to stop bleeding. If the source of bleeding is identified, that is severe epistaxis may be controlled by nasal packing. So each and every time we usually stock some Merosil nasal pack. It is very much useful, commercially available, very much easy to put. So in most of the times, if there is a minor bleeding or epistaxis, but the patient is hemodynamically stable, not in shock, you just put the Merosil pack and almost all the time the bleeding stops. You do not need to give up platelet transfusions. If blood loss can be quantified, this should be replaced in major issues. In the absence of Merosil plaque, you have to give a conventional nasal plaque soaked in tranexamic acid or botroclot or in adrenaline. You can give tranexamic acid IV or oral in these cases to stop this mucosal bleed that you give in the case of ITP. A small mucosal bleed you can give. But if the blood loss can be quantified, this should be replaced in case of major bleed. Now I am talking about the major bleed. That is called the hemodynamic compromise. If the blood loss cannot be quantified, most of the times it cannot be quantified. So give Alipate 5 to 10 ml of fresh packed red cells or 10 to 20 ml per kg of fresh or fairly fresh whole blood. Fresh. Every time they are uttering the fresh. In Bengal guidelines, ICMR guidelines, CDC, WHO, everyone killing fresh. But it's hardly get to fresh whole blood and fresh vaccine. So why everyone is concentrating on the fresh? Because the mainly cause of the bleeding in dengue is not the thrombocytopenia. It is because of the tissue hypoxia and followed by capillary leak. So the oxygen delivery at the tissue level is optimal with high levels of 2,3 dpg. Stored erythrocyte lost 2,3 dpg, low levels of which impede the oxygen releasing capacity of the hemoglobin, resulting in functional tissue hypoxia. So one indication to give fresh blood transfusion to release more of the oxygen in the tissue level to counteract this tissue hypoxia. Because if there is a shock, there must be some sort of tissue hypoxia. That's why everyone is uttering to give fresh. So my advice that if dengue season, please ask the blood bank if you at the blood bank to prepare to give a fresh blood for these patients. and good clinical response, including improving hemodynamic status and acid-base balance should be there. So what are the other things that have been told by WHO? There is no evidence that supports the practice of transfusing platelet concentration and fresh frozen plasma for severe bleeding in dengue. But everyone gives platelet in severe bleeding, even I do. Observational studies shows that transfusion of platelet concentrates and fresh frozen plasma in dengue were not able to sustain the platelet counts and coagulation profile. I know that theoretically, but I give in severe bleeding. However, in case of massive bleeding, they often exacerbate fluid overload. I know, but still I give, everyone gives. In gastrointestinal bleeding, H2 antagonists and proton pump inhibitor have been used, but their efficacy have not been studied. I know theoretically or practically, if the patient having GI bleed, NG2 bleed, I usually give PPI. Great care should be taken when inserting a nasogastric tube of bladder catheter, which may cause severe hemorrhage. Very much important. A lubricated orogastric tube is preferable, and specifically one size small lubricating silicone catheter is preferable for catheterization for this sickness. Inserts of central venous catheters should be done with ultrasound guidance by an expert person. Definitely by expert person. And if you're anticipating bleeding, in this case, you can give prophylactic platelet transfusion at the time of central line insertion. And choice of central line insertion must be in the femorals, not in the neck. Because if there's a bleeding, you can prevent the bleeding. But try to avoid femoral line insertion as long as possible. For the other things they told, it's essential to remember that blood transfusion is the only indicator in a dengue patient with severe bleeding. Unnecessary blood transfusion causes the hematocrit to rise sharply, thus giving a false impression of hemoconcentration and severe plasma leakage, leading to unwanted. So, what we do in our case? Our patient is hemodynamically stable. There is no severe blood loss, mild nasal bleeding, and gum bleeding. So, what I will do? First thing that I will try to stop the bleeding by local applications. I will consult the parents, but I can do this, and when the in-house blood bank is functioning, I will call the blood bank. I will definitely send a blood sample of the patient to the blood bank and tell them to arrange for a cross-match fresh whole blood and platelet. And we'll tell the blood bank, I need to get the confidence of the blood bank that if I need to get the platelet within next 1 or 2 hours, I can get it. But if there is that group of platelet is available in the blood bank, or there is some scarcity of platelet going on at that time period, that is usually evident in the dengue season, I will give platelet in this case. But if I feel that patient is hemodynamically stable, I can stop this minor bleed with local applications, and I can get platelet whenever I need within 1 hour or 30 minutes from my in-house blood bank. I will not give platelet. So this is the practical approach I follow, and 70 to 80% time you find out that our blood bank do not have the platelets, because our blood bank most of the times the blood camp occurs in Sunday and platelet usually expires on Thursday. So if you are there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you will not get the platelet. Even before that, you cannot get the platelet in the dengue season, because most of the platelet transfusion are unnecessary in the dengue. It's a panic transfusion, so the needy patient will not get the platelet. So if you have the access of the platelet within 30 minutes or 1 hour on the major bleed, access of the whole blood, you cannot give platelet in this case. But if you give platelet in this patient, no one will sue you medically as far as the West Bengal guidelines, but not as per the WHO guidelines. So last 2 slides, what are the choice of the fluids? Must be, there is a crystalloids. Colloids come later, after the failure of the crystalloids. So 3 crystalloids are available: normal saline, Ringal lactate, and DNS. The crystalloids must be isotonic saline, must be isotonic fluid. There is no role of hypotonic fluid like Arolite P, 1/5 saline or half DNS. So preferable fluid is a normal saline. If you want to give bolus, give normal saline. Try to continue the normal saline. It is more suitable. But after giving normal saline with a large amount, there is usually a hyperchloremic acidosis. Sometimes this hyperchloremic acidosis persists as a persistent base excess in the blood gases. That may raise the confusion that whether the patient is having lactic acidosis or not, whether the patient is hemodynamically stable or not. If you are feeling that you have given lots of normal saline and there is hyperchloremic acidosis, you can replace the normal saline for Ringal lactate. But very much cautious should be there when there is a pre-existing severe hepatitis or liver disease, because it cannot metabolize lactate. DNS you can give if you are feeling that a patient is very small, total dengue, infant, glycogen reserve is less, oral intake is nil, there are chances of hypoglycemia or hypoglycemia is occurring, you can give DNS, otherwise you can give NS. About the colloids, 4 colloids are available: Brextran, starch, gelatin, and albumin. Albumin had not been included in the Bengal guidelines till last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, there is a high-end meeting in the Shastha Bhavan. They told that, okay, though the albumin is not included in the Bengal guideline, you can give albumin. So any 4 of the colloids you can give. There are lots of pros and cons of the colloids. I will not go into details of this today in today's class. I will tell about the colloids in the severe dengue in the next class. So how much and how fast to run the intravenous fluids? Give a minimum IVF required to maintain good perfusion. And in dengue, though the desirable urine output is 1 ml per kg per hour, but you can tolerate 0.5 ml per kg per hour if the patient is hemodynamically stable. Volume based on the ideal body weight is very much needed. Moda dengue, 4 year, 60 kg, 40 kg. You have to take the ideal body weight according to the age, sex, and usually 90th or 90th percentile taking as a upper limit of the ideal body weight. For underweight child, take the actual body weight. For overweight child, take the ideal body weight. Titrate to hemodynamic state, and hemodynamic state means after the correction of the stock, you try to decrease your fluids in a stepwise manner. Now coming to the severe dengue DSS. I will continue in the next week. So I think I am able to continue. I will able to conclude about the dengue fever without any warning sign that can be managed in domiciliary basis. What you have to tell to the parents, what are the SOS chart you have to give to the parents that if anything happens, come back. I think I am able to tell you about the management of dengue fever without any sorts of warning signs that have been admitted without any theoretical purpose from the other practical reason, how to manage them, how to counsel the parents. I think I told you about the dengue fever with some warning signs without any features of hemoconcentration, thrombocytopenia, or capillary leak, how to manage this. I'm able to tell you about the DHF1 without any hemodynamic compromise, where the increased bleeding tendencies are there, like positive tourniquet test, but no spontaneous bleeding is there, thrombocytopenia is there, there are some capillary leak. I think I will tell you the same situation with there is a minor mucosal bleed. The type 3 and type 4 are the more dreadful. Most of the patient of type 4 dies. Type 3, if you give good therapy, type 4 usually, type 3 usually survives. I will tell about the type 3 and type 4 in the next class if I get another opportunity to tell about it. Thank you.
Prabhas.
হ্যাঁ
প্রীতি বলবি নাকি আগে?
জিজ্ঞেস করছিলাম, বলেছে কি টুয়াইস ডেইলি না করতে প্লেটলেট, কিন্তু ওয়েস্ট বেঙ্গল গভর্নমেন্ট অনেক বিরক্ত করে যদি না করলে।
Yes, yeah, top seed it is mentioned at twice daily. Top seed there is a chart that to write down the hemoglobin PCB platelet and twice daily. But I asked to the Shastro Bhavan, they are telling that if you physician is not feeling that you don't need to do a twice daily blood, you can document in the BST that you do not feel that this patient needs a twice daily blood, so it will be substantiated.
তাহলে হ্যাঁ বিরক্ত করে। আরেকটা বলছি কি কোন রোল অফ প্লাজমা লাইটস?
Plasma light, yes, plasma light is a balanced fluid solutions. There are few studies that are showing that if you give a balanced fluid solution like plasma light or Denylite, in case of septic shock or dengue, the outcome is better, but it's not recommended by any of the guidelines, and I do not want to violate the guidelines, at least in case of dengue.
ওটা তো অ্যাকচুয়ালি হাইপারক্লোরিমিক অ্যাসিডোসিসটা কমাবে, বুঝলি?
কমায়, হ্যাঁ।
আর একটা প্লেটলেট, I think any group platelet can be given, and because we will platelet will run out, so we can give any group platelet apart from RH negative female.
Yes.
Probas, it's a pity that you didn't go to the meeting. তোকে আমি বললাম তোর এত বড় একটা সুযোগ তুই নিলি না। Probas was asked to come to that meeting of West Bengal government, কিন্তু Probas didn't go. আমি অনেকবার বললাম
মিটিং এ নির্যাস পেয়ে গেছি, কি হবে না?
না নির্যাস পেয়ে গেছিস, কিন্তু আমাদের মুখ দেখানো উচিত ছিল। ওরা আমাকে বলেছিল because I don't know anything about fluid transfer.
আপনি যে সময় বলেছেন সেই সময় আমার অন্য কাজ ছিল একটা, কি করে করব?
প্রভাস, I've got one or two questions. One হচ্ছে যে always try to avoid the bathroom, sending this child to the bathroom. বাচ্চা একটু older child, ওরা তো বলবে আমি বাথরুমে যাব।
That's why I asked to get a urinary pot in the bedside. Any inpatient,
even for not only urinary pot, even for stool, they should not go because of the postural hypotension, hypovolemia, and straining. They sometimes collapses in the bathroom.
Yes, any inpatient dengue patient should not go to the bathroom without proper assistance. Try not to tell them to go to the bathroom.
একটা জায়গা আমি মিস করেছি কিনা জানি না, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমি আগে বলিনি আমার সেকেন্ড হচ্ছে যে আমি জানি না আমি মিস করেছি কিনা, তুই কি CPK routinely করিস? Because when I used to manage, I used to do the CPK routinely, and that gives us a good idea about how much inflammation and muscle damage.
So CPK is a surrogate marker of SGOT. If the SGOT is high, LDH and CPK must be high.
So I do CPK. Our third thing হচ্ছে যে ondansetron intravenously can sometimes cause arrhythmias.
So I told not to give.
Yes.
So
okay.
what about domperidone? Domperidone দিবি না কেন?
No, it's better to give the mouth dissolving ondansetron tablets.
Domperidone তো কাজ করে।
You can give oral domperidone. It's quite good. Some EPS is very rare.
আর থার্ড হচ্ছে যে আমাদের যেভাবে মেজারমেন্ট করা হয় the urine output, I think it is better to keep at 1 ml rather than 0.5 ml. কারণ একটু যদি এদিক ওদিক গন্ডগোল হয়ে যায় সেটা because of the recording problem.
Yes. Pediatric
1 ml is better than 0.5 ml.
Pediatrics are one in pediatrics one in
0.5 to 1.
If you managing this patient in pediatric ward, urine output must be between 1 ml per kg per hour to 3 ml per kg per hour. If you are managing this patient in ICU,
0.5 ml is too low.
No, 0.5 ml is for the ICU, not for the ward. When the patient is catheterized and drop to drop urine measurement is there.
যত লেকচারে বলে কিন্তু 1 to 2 ml per kg, কেউ 0.5 বলে না, 1 to 2 ml।
ICU management is 0.5 ml per kg per hour.
না সেটা তো তোর 30 কিলোর উপরে 30 কিলোর উপরে হলে 0.3 0.5
আরেকটা জিনিস প্রবাস, যখন তোর ওয়েটিং রুমে দেখবি যে ডেঙ্গু পেশেন্ট গুলো বেশি ফিজেটি, those are going into complication. ছটফট করে যেগুলো বেশি হাইপক্সিয়ার জন্য,
cerebral hypoperfusion ওগুলো।
প্রভাস বস, sorry প্রভাস, hello. I would like to comment on GI हमारे, you have nicely covered. Just one or two points I want to add. Basically, the cause of GI hemorrhage, there are many case studies, and one of the commonest cause of complications in dengue. So mostly এটা দেখা গেছে যে একটা বড় সিরিজ আছে 1000 কেসেস এর, যদি ওটা ওল্ড 2002 2004 এরকম না, গ্যাস্ট্রিক ইলোশন, পেপটিক আলসার, গ্যাস্ট্রিক আলসার, ডিউডেনাল আলসার্স, এগুলোই পাওয়া গেছে। and it is one condition where actually endoscopy is not first line indicated, because usually these bleedings are controlled by blood transfusion and other supportive management. But in case of ongoing bleed, if the bleed continues, if there is a large duodenal ulcer which starts bleeding, in those cases we can go for endoscopic therapy like sclerotherapy or gold probe laser therapy. So in dengue, GI hemorrhage is one of the most commonest complication, but in most of the cases probably endoscopy is not needed. Even if he is in a tertiary care, the bleeding can be controlled by other supportive care.
Yes.
প্রভাস, অনেকগুলো কোশ্চেন আছে কিন্তু চ্যাটে দেখে নিও প্লিজ।
Okay, I am writing try to answer all the questions. So first question is Subhajit, should we send cholesterol?
প্রভাস প্লিজ আমার একটা একটু ডাউট একটু ক্লিয়ার করে দিই। আমি সুমনদা বলছি।
হ্যাঁ
বলছি যে দেখ, ওবেস বাচ্চা সব সময় ঝামেলা। তো এবার ধর একটা 10 বছরের বাচ্চা, তার হাইট যদি বেশি থাকে, তাহলে সেক্ষেত্রে কি হাইট কারেকশন অনুযায়ী আমাদের আইডিয়াল ওয়েটটা খুঁজতে হবে, নাকি 10 বছরে রাফলি 30-35 কেজি ধরে নিয়ে 30-33 কেজি ধরে নিয়ে করতে হবে?
হ্যাঁ না, ডেফিনেটলি এজ, সেক্স এন্ড হাইট সেটার উপর ডিপেন্ড করে আইডিয়াল ওয়েটটা ক্যালকুলেট করতে হবে।
তাহলে হাইট ওয়েট ফর হাইটটা তো তাহলে যেতে হবে।
হ্যাঁ, ওই তো আমাদের একটা চার্ট আছে তো, যে এই কোন সেন্টেন্সে কি আছে, একটা চার্ট আছে।
ওটাই বলছি তো, যেখানে হাইটটাও টেকেন ইনটু কনসিডারেশন করতে হবে।
ডেফিনেটলি সেক্স এন্ড হাইট, এজ, সেক্স,
মোস্ট ইম্পর্টেন্ট থিং হচ্ছে গিয়ে ওভারহাইড্রেট না করা হয়, সেটাই দেখতে হবে।
Sure.
So can I answer the chat questions?
প্রভাস, একটা কথা বলি, তুই যে একটু আগে বলার সময় বললি যে অ্যাডিকুয়েট বেড রেস্টটা দরকার নেই। অ্যাডিকুয়েট বেড রেস্ট ইজ ভেরি এসেনশিয়াল ফর প্রিভেন্টিং হাইপারটেনশন। না এটা অপূর্ব বললো,
দরকার নেই না। আমি বললাম যদি আমি ডোমিসাইল হোম কেয়ার করি, অ্যাডিকুয়েট বেড রেস্ট লেখা আছে, তাহলে all of the adequate bed rest after child to roam around, the chances of metabolism is more and the chances of dehydration is more. There are chances of postural hypotension as well as there are chances of trauma. If there is a minor thrombocytopenia, chance of trauma is more. That's why the adequate bed rest has been given. But এটা তো আমরা usually prescription এ কখনো লিখি না adequate bed rest, but it is in all the guidelines. If there is no question, I will ask the reply chat box.
প্রভাস আর একটা কোশ্চেন জিজ্ঞেস করতে পারি?
হ্যাঁ শিওর শিওর।
একটা যে আমাদের in our residency actually আমরা প্রফেসর সুনীত সিংহির একটা রিভিউ আর্টিকেল ছিল, তো we used to follow that for fluid management, যেখানে we used to start with 7 ml per kg per hour, then we used to come down to 4 ml. তো ওই অ্যালগরিদমটা কি ফলো করা, মানে পিসিবি দেখা হতো every 2 hourly?
ডেঙ্গু ম্যানেজমেন্ট করার ক্ষেত্রে আমার ফার্স্ট ক্রাইটেরিয়া থাকে যাতে আমাকে ক্লিনিক্যাল এস্টাবলিশমেন্ট কমিশন না ডাকে, ওয়েস্ট বেঙ্গল মেডিকেল কাউন্সিল না ডাকে, তারপরে বাচ্চা ঠিক হলো। ফার্স্ট কাউন্সিল আমি থেকে নিজের পিঠ বাঁচানো ফর ডেঙ্গি নট ফর আদার কেসেস। সো
ওই আর্টিকেলটা তুমি নিশ্চয়ই দেখেছো, মানে ওটা খুব সুন্দর, যেটা 7 ml 4 ml
protocols for dengue fluids. Whatever protocol you give, if you meticulously monitor the patient will survive. But for us practicing in the Bengal, you should not deviate from the Bengal guidelines. For the chat box, just a minute. Should we take cholesterol for every patient with dengue? Okay, cholesterol for every patient with dengue. From my experience for the last 3 years, I found that cholesterol is the early biochemical marker for capillary leak. It is down below 90 before the hematocrit rises and platelet falls. So we are doing a study. Myself, Sanchari and Satyajit will be submit it to ethical committee about the evaluation of POCUS and cholesterol to identify the dengue patients in the earliest stage of the capillary leak. Anytime, please let us know, either myself, Sanchari or Satyajit, so that we can include in our study to evaluate the role of cholesterol as an early marker of capillary leak. And I am telling you that it's very much sensitive. If your cholesterol is less than 50, that means that your patient has a severe capillary leak. It is my experience, it's not evidence based. So we want to do a study so that we can establish as a evidence based.
না না প্রভাস দা, এটা তো অলরেডি লক কুমার ফার্নান্ডোর যে লেটেস্ট আর্টিকেলটা ছিল ও অলরেডি বলেছে, মানে ওরা পেয়েছে এভিডেন্স, ওরা ডেফিনেটলি এভিডেন্স পেয়েছে, তুমিও পাবে অবভিয়াসলি।
ইন্ডিয়াতে স্টাডি নেই। সো এনি SDP single donor platelet definitely if you the rise of platelet is more in SDP rather than RDP, because it's not like that SDP is more effective, because in SDP you are giving a large amount of platelet. In SDP you are getting a big bag of the platelet, you give a large amount of platelet. In this otherwise RDP is good enough. Shubhankar, should we send albumin cholesterol every time with HbPCV platelet? Yes, I think yes, because we are doing a study on it. So it will be help in our study for albumin and cholesterol to collaborate with the HbPCV and platelet. Aniruddha, for adolescent, what should be the upper limit of total IV fluid per day? As adults, you should not go beyond the upper limit of the adults. Shomiran, can we give colloids in DSS? Because in recent 2002 surveillance guideline, crystalloids should be used. Can we practically use colloids? Definitely. In DSS, there is a role of colloids. Which colloids, how much, for the side effects, I will tell you in the DSS class. Devboma, what is the maximum amount of IV fluid that will be given per day? Is the highest level of, this is not that, it is depending upon the upper limit of weight of the kit, that the maximum amount, there is no maximum amount. It was told that if you identify the capillary leak in the earliest phase, means within 4 to 6 hours of the start of the capillary leak, then to encounter this capillary leak, the total amount of extra fluid needed, that is maintenance plus 5%. Means if you have a 10 kg old kit, the extra fluid is 10 into 50 means 500 ml plus this maintenance for the next 24 to 48 hours. Sanchari, for children who are not toilet trained, the practice in ICS to wet the diapers, is the method is okay, methodically correct, or should we catheterize such patient at the baseline itself? It's very difficult to do catheterization each and every patient to the stable patient to catheterize. If the measurement of Haggis is quite good, if you are not satisfied with the measurement of Haggis, you can put a minicom. Minicom is a small urinary bag that is a adhesive around. You can take it on the pubis. You can get 1 or 2 minicom per day and measure the urine output in the minicom. But Haggis measurement can give you the baseline idea about the urine output. If you are suspicious, do not hesitate to put a catheter. Sir, one of the major reasons for mortality of dengue patient is fluid overload. So when you are managing dengue on the basis of the clinical symptoms, there are chances of overload. How to restrain ourselves from doing this. That I told that fluid overload is the most of the thing. If you are getting more than 3 ml per kg per hour of urine output, that means you are overloading the fluids, overloading the patient with fluid. And if the patient is clinically improving with the decreasing stable vitals and decreasing hematocrit, that means the patient is improving. Try to decrease your fluid as soon as possible. Is there any role of
একটা জাস্ট অ্যাড করছি, বলছি লিভারটা যদি মার্ক করে রাখে দেন অলসো দে ক্যান আই মিন দে ক্যান লিভার মার্ক করা একটা
and in ICU usually we assess the fluid overload with our USG. There are lots of measures how to measure the fluid responsiveness. In USG we can get a pulmonary edema, you can get the amount of pleural effusion, you can get the IVC, everything is there. You can get the B lines in the lung comments are there. Is there any FFP?
আইসিইউতে না থাকলে at least ওয়ার্ডে রেসিডেন্টের একটা গুড প্র্যাকটিস থাকা উচিত।
আমাদের মোটামুটি সব রেসিডেন্ট ট্রেন্ড হচ্ছে। Is there any role of FFP? Yes, in stage 3 or stage 4 DHF, DSS with impaired coagulation, there's a severe bleeding is there, but supported by your low fibrinogen, increased FDP, deranged PT and INR, APTT, severe cases, there is a role of FDP. Abdul Devre, what is the maximum IVF per hour we can give in dengue? Maximum IVF per hour. There is not such thing than maximum IVF per hour. If you sometimes you may need to give a 20 ml per kg per hour if the patient is strong. There is not such that even maximum per hour. But you should not take the upper weight more than 40 kg. 40 to 45 kg is the upper weight you should take. You should not take it because if you calculate the adults are taking as 40 to 45 kg as the upper limit of the body weight. From Redmi to everyone, Redmi, good name. Management of dengue leak in nephrotic syndrome. Very difficult question. Management of dengue leak in definite nephrotic syndrome. There is no guidelines. I will try to avoid this types of patient in my ICU definitely. So Mimi, which patients we should consider maintenance for 5%? Definitely, the total amount of fluid you need to give during the capillary leak is the maintenance for 5%. If you are able to diagnose the patient in a capillary leak early, like mean DHF1 or DHF2, where the just patient is entering into the capillary leak. But this is theoretical. You should not try to exceed beyond 5%. There are chances of fluid overload. I repeat to everyone, the pH of plasma light and NS1 5.45 respectively, acidosis will be equal in both. Chloride in less in plasma light 90, but plasma light is a balanced salt solutions because plasma light contains all the electrolytes like chloride, potassium, everything. So in case of DF type 1 without any bleed, if we do need to transfuse blood as per the flow chart, what should be the choice of blood product? You do not need to give any blood in DHF1 because there is no bleeding. Any documented role of papain leaf extract to increase platelet count? No role. Regarding cholesterol is the marker of capillary leak. Why it is not decreased in nephrotic syndrome as there is 2 capillary leak? No, in nephrotic syndrome the mechanism is different. In nephrotic syndrome there is these lipidemias are there, so the cholesterol is raised in this. The mechanism are different, but definitely we need to think about this. Why cholesterol is high in nephrotic syndrome and cholesterol is low in dengue fever, but in nephrotic it's less the capillary leak. Capillary leak is mainly due to the hypoproteinemia, due to difference in the oncotic pressure, rather than a definite capillary leak and more protein output from the urine than the capillary leak. If the child complains of pain abdomen, do we give tramadol immediately or only in uncontrolled cases? For pain abdomen, first assess whether the patient having some hemodynamic compromise or not. There is a chance of mesenteric ischemia or not. If there is a not mesenteric ischemia, try to console the patient with paracetamol. If uncontrolled, then you can give tramadol, but definitely with the supervision of a senior. Can you give DNS when fluid rate is very high, even if isotonic? No. You should try to avoid DNS because there are dextrose concentration fluid may lead to hyperglycemia. You can give DNS when there is a documented hypoglycemia or you feel the patient is a small kid, an infant, 3, 4, 6 months old with a very poor glycogen reserve, chances of hypoglycemia is more, then you can give DNS. Otherwise, try to give NS.
স্যার আমি কি একটা প্রশ্ন করব স্যার?
হ্যাঁ, শিওর
স্যার। বলছি ফেসিয়াল পাফিনেস অথবা যদি পেরিঅরবিটাল পাফিনেস দেখি অথচ পিসিবিটা আমরা পাচ্ছি না হাতে, কিছুক্ষণ মানে নেক্সট পিসিবি আমরা হাতে পাচ্ছি না, অথচ এই পাফিনেস কমপ্লেন করছে বা দেখতে পাচ্ছি, তখন কি আমরা ফ্লুইড কোনো মেইনটেনেন্স মানে কারেকশনের কোনো ইয়ে করব?
এটা কি অন অ্যাডমিশন নাকি আফটার অ্যাডমিশন?
আফটার অ্যাডমিশন। আমরা ধরুন আপকামিং যে পিসিবিটা পাচ্ছি না হাতে, অথচ ফেসিয়াল পাফিনেস অথবা পেরিঅরবিটাল পাফিনেস পাচ্ছি।
অ্যাডমিট ছিল স্টেবলে, হঠাৎ দেখা গেল পেশেন্টের পাফিনেস ডেভেলপ করেছে। ডেফিনেটলি ভেরি গুড কোশ্চেন। সো পাফিনেস ডেভেলপ করছে means there is some clinical features of probably capillary leak is there. So to confirm it, we need some lab test. So what are the lab tests? You need a HB, PCB, platelet, albumin, cholesterol, everything. But you are not getting it. before 2 to 3 hours or some problem. So what you can do a tourniquet. If a tourniquet test is positive at that time, that means the patient is in capillary leak. Or you can get a simply focus. So here lies the importance of focus. You can do a focus. You see whether there is increased fluid in the there is a fluid in the abdomen or there is a fluid in the pleural cavity. So any puffiness is there. Most probably, almost all the times you are in the capillary leak. But sometimes, if you give lots of fluid without a capillary leak, you can get a puffiness. So in this case, if you try to increase your fluid, you may deep sleep. So if you get a puffiness, try to get the labs as soon as possible. If you are not getting the labs, 2 ultrasound machines are there in the PICU. It will take 5 minutes to take the patient to the PICU and do a screening ultrasound of the pleural fluid and ascites. If you are not getting any pleural fluid and ascites, puffiness is there, then most probably you are given an extra fluid. If you get a pleural fluid and abdominal fluid in 1 or 2 of this and puffiness is there, that possibly the capillary leak has been started. So you have to manage the patient as a capillary leak like 6 ml per kg per hour. The patient is hemodynamically stable and wait for the blood reports.
Thank you, sir.
প্রভাস দা উইথ ইউর পারমিশন, আমাদের ওই একটা জায়গায় খুব গন্ডগোল হয়, যেটা হচ্ছে যে যখন আমরা কমাচ্ছি, যখন আমরা স্টেপ ডাউন করছি, তখন আমরা ওই অনেক জায়গায় অনেক সময় দেখি যে 4 ml per kg per hour থেকে কমিয়ে 3 ml per kg per hour, সেখান থেকে 2 ml per kg per hour। কিন্তু প্রত্যেকটা গাইডলাইন ইনক্লুডিং WHO, ইনক্লুডিং ওই বিশ্ব বাংলা সবকটা গাইডলাইনই রেশনিং সিস্টেম যেটা আছে সেটা হচ্ছে 1.5, 3, 6 and 10। এর মাঝামাঝি ওই 4, 5 এসবের কোনো জায়গা নেই। সেইটা একটুখানি ভালো করে একদম এটা
10, 6, 3
তোমার যদি 3 থেকে নামতে হয় 1.5 নামতে হবে, তোমার যদি 6 থেকে নামতে হয় 3 এ নামতে হবে। ওই 5 করলাম 4 করলাম ওইটার কোনো ফান্ডা নেই। এইটা মানে
কমনলি প্র্যাকটিস। কিন্তু এটা আমি বলছি যে ইফ ইউর পেশেন্ট ইজ ইমপ্রুভিং, ইউ আর ডিক্রিজিং ইউর ফ্লুইড কতটা পরিমাণে কমাচ্ছিস, এইটা অতটা আগের পেশেন্টটার থেকে দেখেছি আমি, এটা অতটা ইম্পর্টেন্ট নয় দ্যান ইউ আর ইনক্রিজিং। ডেফিনেটলি ইনক্রিজে যদি 10 ml না হয়, ডাইরেক্টলি গোইং টু দ্য 20 ml, নট গোইং দ্য 15, 16, 17, 18। বাট ইউ হ্যাভ টু ফলো দ্য প্রোটোকল। ইফ ইটস নট অফারিং ইন 10, গো টু 20। 10 এর থেকে তলায় কমালে there are 4 things: 1.5, 3, 6, 10, 20। in between কিছু নেই according to the guidelines।
প্রভাস এই নাম্বার গুলো কোত্থেকে এসছে রে? এই তোর 5, 6, 7, 8, 9
এইগুলো কোত্থেকে এসছে কি জানেন না, কেউ জানে না। 6 এর জায়গায় যদি আমি 5 দিই, 4 দিই, তারপর 3 দিই, তাতে কি প্রবলেম? তাতে কোনো প্রবলেম নেই। গাইডলাইনসে দিয়েছে, আমাদের করতে হচ্ছে। কেন আগেবারে যখন ডেঙ্গু ইন্সপেকশন এসেছিল ওটাই দেখেছিল, এই তোমরা 6 থেকে কেন 4 করেছো, 4 কোথায় লেখা আছে গাইডলাইন?
হ্যাঁ আগেরবার বলে গেছিল, সেজন্যই বললাম।
ইউরিন আউটপুট তো 4 ml করে হচ্ছে, তোমরা তো বেশি ফ্লুইড দিয়েছো।
না ওটাই আর কি, মানে ওটার সোর্সটা কোথাও, ওই সোর্সটা কোথা থেকে পাচ্ছি না, যে ওটা এক্স্যাক্টলি ওই নাম্বারগুলো যে কি কোথা থেকে এলো ওই নাম্বারগুলো।
ওটা WHO গাইডলাইনে একটা টেবিল আছে, WHO গাইডলাইনে একটা টেবিল আছে।
10, 6, 3, 1.5 একটা টেবিল আছে।
মানে what does that translate to? মানে আমরা মানে হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু জিনিসটা হচ্ছে যে আমি যেটা বলছি যে তো ধর একটা মেইনটেনেন্স ফ্লুইড বা এত পার্সেন্ট ডিহাইড্রেশন কারেকশন, অত পার্সেন্ট ডিহাইড্রেশন কারেকশন, ওই হিসেবে যদি আমি দেখি তাহলে what does it translate to? মানে তার সঙ্গে কি কোনো কোরিলেশন আছে? মানে ওই নাম্বারগুলো
এটা আরবিট্রারি নাম্বার,
সেটা তো ওরা কিছু বলেনি।
আচ্ছা, রোল অফ ল্যাসিক্স ইন ডেঙ্গি অলিগুরিয়া, রোল অফ ল্যাসিক্স ইন ডেঙ্গি অলিগুরিয়া, no role of Lasix in dengue oliguria.
Kick, Lasix kick.
But
Rota 7 Lasix kick.
The fusamate kick, এটা আমি করি, কিন্তু আমি এটা বলবো না। fusamate kick বলে একটা ব্যাপার আছে, এটা আমি করি, খুব সাকসেসফুলি করি। বা কখন করতে হয় না করতে হয় সেটা যখন PICU তে ক্লাস করতে আসবি তখন বলবো। I will not tell them fusamate kick. There is a role of fusamate kick, but not theoretically, not practically. There is a role of
আনাড়ি হাতে বিপদ হবে।
আনাড়ি হাতে বিপদ হবে, fusamate kick. If you keep Mercedes in the hands of Kolkata taxi driver, it will create problem. So if the newcomers and first years feel any questions that they are regarding this thing, you can message me personally in WhatsApp.
স্যার কিছু একটা বলছেন, স্যারের অডিও
একটা কথা আমি বলবো যে প্রত্যেকটা পেশেন্টের রাউন্ডের সময় 2-3 করে পালস ভলিউমটা ফিল করা। That's very important because every time you cannot do the ultrasound, urine output, everything. কিন্তু pulse volume টা কিন্তু ভীষণ ভাবে important, and pulse
basics
একদম বেসিকটা দিয়েই তো আমরা করেছি কাজ। আমি তো ধর দীর্ঘদিন কাজ করেছি, তখন ছিল না pulse volume and the pulse rate, একটা pulse oximeter আমি লাগিয়ে রাখলাম।
Definitely disproportionate tachycardia according to the fever. পেশেন্টের জ্বর নেই কিন্তু ট্যাকিকার্ডিক, বাস। This is
pulse volume টা ফিল করলে পালস ভলিউমটা ফিল করলে খুব ভালো করে আর্লি স্টেজে বোঝা যায় যে পেশেন্ট কেমন যাচ্ছে। আর পালস রেটটা একটা পালস অক্সিমিটার লাগিয়ে রাখো এন্ড সি হাউ দ্য পালস রেট ইজ ইনক্রিজিং অর ডিক্রিজিং। এত সুন্দরভাবে নেমে আসে when your volume correction হচ্ছে, এত সুন্দরভাবে হার্ট রেটটা আস্তে আস্তে নেমে আসে। excepting some cases of myocarditis, 3-4টে পেশেন্ট আমি মায়োকার্ডাইটিস পেয়েছি যে যেখানে পালস রেটটা কিন্তু বাড়েনি সেভাবে, rather কমেছে। that is the
tell about these things. I tell about these things in severe dengue and other things.
ঠিক আছে, থ্যাংক ইউ, গুড নাইট, গুড নাইট। আর অনেকে ভিডিওটা অন করে রাখিস যাতে আমি সবার মুখটা দেখতে পারি। I like to see the whole
questions. ECG changes in the dengue. There is a bradycardia and sinus bradyarrhythmia in the recovery phase. It is common. Don't need to do anything.
হ্যাঁ, মায়াদির মুখটা তো দেখতে পেলাম না আজকে।
এই তো দেখতে পাবি।
ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে। দীপা, can you switch on your video? Deepa, yeah, how is your child? Oh, lovely to see. Lovely to see. I was showing his photograph to my juniors that how Deepa worked sincerely for so long without seeing the child. We miss you all.
Hello, Betu.
Divya, are you there? Divya?
থ্যাংক ইউ অল।
ঠিক করলাম।
খুব ভালো করেছিস বাবা।